To check the intonation of your guitar, you need a tuner and ideally a pick. Now, one thing that's very important that you do when you're checking the intonation is you want to be holding the guitar just like this. You want to hold it the way that you're going to play it, because gravity actually pulls down on the strings a little bit, and it's enough that it will throw off the intonation if you have a sensitive enough tuner. You don't want to be bending the string at all, because that can also change the intonation or make the pitch sharp or flat. So to check the intonation of your guitar, what you're going to do is, using a tuner, make sure that your guitar is perfectly in tune. And if you're not familiar, standard tuning is just E, A, D, G, B, E. And once you have the guitar perfectly in tune, then you're going to fret the 12th fret. And you want to check the tuning on the 12th fret, and it should match identically what you played when you play open strings. So an open E should be dead on E, and the 12th fret should also be exactly E. A should be A. D should be D. G should be G. B should be B. And E should be E. And when you go through this, if the guitar is not in tune exactly E, A, D, G, B, E, if it's not like exactly on the money on your tuner, you're going to have a lot of confusion and difficulty when you try and set the intonation. And I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to get some zoomed in shots on my tuner here so you can see. And I think so my E string here is a little bit off. And it's the only one that's a little bit off. And I'm going to show you how to adjust it based on if the note is a little bit more sharp than it should be, or if it's a little bit more flat than it should be. So zooming in on the tuner here, playing the E string, I can see that it is a little bit flat, and I'm going to tighten it a little bit. The left side of the tuner here is flat, and the right side is sharp. And in other words, flat is it's not quite tuned to the E pitch, and sharp is it's tuned a little bit higher than the E pitch. So now that that is dead on E, I'm going to fret the 12th fret and double check the intonation again. And I see that the intonation there is sharp. And that means that I need to adjust the saddle on my bridge. And if the string is too sharp, what you need to do is move the saddle forwards towards the headstock of your guitar. Because what that does is it shortens the length of the string. And if the note is flat, so if this E were over here instead of on the sharp side, then I would need to back the saddle up away from the headstock of the guitar, and that would lengthen the string, which would give me a slightly sharper tone. So I'm going to change the camera angle here and show you guys how to do that. In order to move the saddle forward, the first thing you need to do is detune the string, because you don't want to have tension and pressure on here. So I have that almost at slack. And to move the saddle forward, you actually need to loosen this screw, and that's going to allow the saddle to move forward. And I'm just going to give it one full turn. Now, because I do have some tension on the string here, I'm going to lift this up a little bit and make sure that the saddle actually did move forward. And now I'm going to retune the string and double check the intonation. And now that I've got this tuned to pitch, back to E. We can see that it's now perfectly intonated. All of my other strings should also be still properly intonated, even though I changed the E string. But just because I did make that change, and I did do a pretty big adjustment to the truss rod, I'm going to go through all of them one more time just to double check and make sure that they're all still on. And now the guitar is perfectly intonated, the truss rod is straight, and the last thing to do is just to double check the string height and the pickup height, especially since I've cranked this down so far. If you want to get a really precise measurement of your string height, one of the easiest ways to do that is to take a capo and put it across the first fret. And I do mean the first fret, not the second fret. So it is a different fret than when you're checking the truss rod. Now, once you have a capo across the first fret, you're going to want to take a mechanics ruler that can measure up to 30 seconds of an inch. So something like this. And you're going to want to take the mechanics ruler and measure off the top of the 12th fret, which would be right here. So you measure off the top of the crown of the 12th fret. And how I do this is I just take the roller and I slide it so it's touching the string. And let me zoom in on that so you guys can see. And you want the string height to be 3 30-seconds of an inch on the bass side and about 2 30-seconds of an inch on the treble side. Now, I couldn't quite get the camera angle perfect, and since the string is about the size of a 32nd of an inch, you'll have to take my word that that's dead on 3 30-seconds of an inch there. And you don't need to measure every single string, but it is good to go through and double check. And I can actually see the D string here could probably be raised a small amount, as well as the G string. And that's probably because the truss rod adjustment I made was such a large one. Then the B string is right where it's supposed to be at about 2 30-seconds of an inch, as is the E string. So again, you want the first 3 strings on the bass side to be about 3 30-seconds of an inch, and then you want the lower 3 strings on the treble side to be about 2 30-seconds of an inch. And in a perfect world, they're going tallest to shortest. So you want them to gradually decrease in height as you go from the bass side to the treble side. And I mean, in a perfect world, it would be in an exact perfect scale. But again, it really comes to your personal preference and feel, and that can vary from neck to neck. On this guitar in particular, I actually like to have the strings slightly higher than I like to have them on my Paul Reed Smith guitar. I like them to be lower on the Paul Reed Smith Mira and a little bit higher on here because it produces a little bit of a twangier sound. And it sounds more like a Strat, and that's exactly what I want for this guitar. But I don't want that on my Paul Reed Smith. I want it to sound more like a metal rock guitar. So it really depends on what you're going for and what you want. And then when you do adjust the string height, you definitely want to detune the guitar. You don't want to be putting a lot of pressure and tension on the pins. And in case it's not obvious, these are what I'm referring to as the pins. They're just the little Allen screw keys. They just move the saddles up and down in height. So to lower these or raise them, you need this Allen key. It may have come with your guitar. If you have an aftermarket bridge, you should have gotten one with a bridge. If not, it may be hard to find these at a hardware store. Most guitar parts stores will sell them, and they should be pretty cheap, probably under $1. Now, before you make any of these adjustments to the string height, you definitely want to remove the capo that was on the first fret, and then you want to detune the guitar. And you want to detune the guitar to about slack. You don't need to remove the strings all the way. You can have some tension on there, but it should be enough that you can literally come and lift the string off the top of that. If you can't move the string off the top of that, then you could strip or damage these little screw pins. And if you do that, then you're going to have a really hard time getting the guitar to play well or keep intonation. So I wanted to raise the height of the D string, and I'm going to do that by screwing this screw pin down. So I'm turning it clockwise to tighten it. And looking at the roller here, obviously a 32nd of an inch is very, very small. It's actually just about the width of this Allen key. So it's a very, very tiny adjustment. It's maybe 2 or 3 threads. Then I'm also going to raise the G string. And everything else was just about perfect. So I am going to take the guitar, tune it back to pitch, double check the intonation, and then double check the string height, because when you raise the string height, it typically doesn't, but it can have an effect on intonation. And it can create some other problems that you may not have foreseen when you did the truss rod adjustment. But that's why you do this process in this order, because this one has the smallest impact on all of the other stuff. Oh, and I almost forgot, I'm going to raise the pickup height back to where I had it before I made the truss rod adjustment. Now, I'm just eyeballing this based off the other pickups because I can't actually check this height properly until the strings are actually back in tune. And one last thing that you should make sure that you do before you tune the guitar is make sure that the strings are across the center of each saddle. You want to make sure that they're not like all the way over to the side or touching one of these pegs, because that can throw off the intonation, it can throw off the way that the guitar plays, and it will cause your strings to break faster. So now that I've got the guitar back in tune, I'm going to double check the pickup height here real quick. And it's almost the exact same way that you check the string height, except you don't have a capo across any of the strings, and you're just going to fret the last fret here. And you measure the pickup height off the top of the bobbin, and you fret the last fret. And you want that to be about 3/32 on the bass side, and 2.5 to 2/32 on the treble side. And I can see that is exactly dead on, and I think you guys can actually see that on the camera there too. I'm not even going to measure the middle ones because I know that the bass side and the treble side, the E and E strings are exactly where I want them. The second to last thing I'm going to do is put this capo back on the first fret, and I'm going to check the string height here to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be, and that my string height adjustment on the D string did raise it to about 3/32, and that's good there. And the G string is also as high as it should be, and everything else is reading properly. So now the last thing there is to do is just to check the intonation one last time. So that's it. That is how to completely set up a floating bridge style guitar, from the truss rod adjustment to checking the string height to checking intonation and double checking the pickup height. And again, with the string height and the pickup height, so long as you're not getting fret buzz and you're not having the pickups pull the strings towards the guitar because the magnets are too close, then you can really play around with it. You can make them as low or as high as you want within reason to achieve different types of sounds. So if you wanted to play something that was like a really hot metal riff, you may raise these, say 1/32 of an inch up here on the bass side of the guitar, so that this is at 2/32, which would be almost even with the treble side of the guitar. So it really boils down to personal preference and the specific goal that you're trying to achieve with whatever sound that you're trying to make come out of your guitar. So I hope that you guys found this helpful and that everything was pretty clear. And as always, if you have any questions, please post them in the Facebook group, and I'll see you on the inside.